In 1999, 23-year-old Fan Man Yi of Hong Kong was kidnapped by a loan shark and two accomplices after stealing a small sum of money. For over a month, she was held captive in a Sim Sha Sui apartment, where she was beaten with metal bars, burned with melted plastic, forced to smile through torture, and subjected to humiliating commands until she finally died from her injuries. Her killers then dismembered her body, boiling the remains, and sewing her skull into a large Hello Kitty mermaid doll. The crime only came to light when a teenage accomplice confessed, claiming she was being haunted by Fan's ghost, leading police to one of the most horrifying discoveries in Hong Kong's history. In 2012, two 13-year-old boys in Wisconsin were apparently so desperate for pizza and weed that they resorted to something horrific. They lured one boy's 78-year-old great-grandmother into her garage and brutally attacked her with a hatchet and hammer, caving in her skull and leaving her to die on the cold floor. They then rifled through her purse, walking away with just $155, blood money that hours later they blew on pizza, marijuana, and video games, laughing as if nothing happened. Investigators described the scene as one of the most disturbing they'd ever witnessed. The frail woman's body left beaten and discarded over a sum barely worth a week's allowance. Both boys were quickly arrested, showed little remorse, and were sentenced to decades in prison, ensuring the rest of their youth would be spent behind bars. A North Carolina man was sentenced to nearly a decade in prison after one of the most disturbing neglect cases in recent history. For 6 to 8 months, 66-year-old Bonnie Kornhaber, who was bound to a wheelchair, lay helplessly on the floor of her cluttered, hoarded home after falling from her chair. Her husband Lewis admitted he never called for help because he was embarrassed about the conditions inside, leaving her to waste away surrounded by spoiled food, trash, and insects. When Bonnie finally told him she couldn't breathe, he ignored her pleas and watched TV in another room until she was dead. By the time first responders arrived, her body was covered in sores and filth, and Lewis was later convicted of second-degree murder and neglect, sealing his downfall after nearly 40 years of marriage. In 2005, Florida retirees Reggie and Carol Sumner thought they had found peace in their Jacksonville home, but instead, they fell victim to one of the most sadistic crimes imaginable. Lured by Tiffany Cole, a woman they once treated like family, the couple was ambushed by her and 3 accomplices, who bound, gagged, and stuffed them into the trunk of their own car. They were driven across state lines to a remote patch of Georgia woods where a grave had already been dug for them. Still alive, terrified, and gasping for air, the Sumners were thrown into the hole and buried alive beneath the dirt, left to slowly suffocate as the killers laughed about the money they were about to steal. The reason for this unimaginable cruelty was shockingly small: to steal from the couple's life savings of less than $100,000. All 4 were quickly caught and convicted, with Tiffany later being sentenced to death. She killed her family not out of hatred, but because of something far more tragic. In August of 2025, a horrifying sequence unfolded in Madbury, New Hampshire. 34-year-old Emily Long shot and killed her husband Ryan and 2 of their children, ages 6 and 8, before turning the gun on herself. The couple's youngest child, a toddler, was thankfully found unharmed. Ryan had been battling an aggressive form of brain cancer, and in the days before the killings, Emily had been posting tearful TikToks calling herself a brain cancer wife, speaking about the pain, exhaustion, and hopelessness of watching the man she loved fade away. What looked like a caregiver's heartbreak turned out to be a final desperate collapse, a mother who decided that if her husband couldn't survive, none of them could move forward.